Hello everyone, today I'm going to be teaching you how to use the free version of DaVinci Resolve 18 to edit any video you need to edit. So when you open up your main screen here, you're going to see all of your previous projects, all the stuff you've been working on. Over here is your network where you can look up your different projects within your network, or the cloud-based system where you can log into Blackmagic Cloud and get all your video footage from there. You're going to click down here into New Project and then title it Tutorial. And it will open up to this screen right here. So this right here is the interface. We're going to teach you all about what the interface is first before we get into any editing. The first thing that's important to notice about the interface is the pages at the bottom. This first one is the media, where you can import and manage all the different clips that you have. Next is the cut page, where you're able to cut down your clips to something a bit more manageable really quickly. Then we have our editing page, which is pretty much like Premiere Pro, which is your main editing interface where you're going to do most of the editing and cutting when the actual video footage is ready to go on your timeline. The Fusion page is for animation or motion graphics that you might want to be able to do once you start getting a little more advanced. This tab is color, and it's really good for color grading and color correcting all of your footage, and you're going to be spending most of your time fixing your footage here before you even start editing it at all. This is the full professional audio editing tab called Fairlight, and this is where you can fix all your audio issues or add some enhancements to make your stuff sound better. And this last one, the little rocket ship at the bottom, is the Deliver tab. This is where we can save and export all of our different projects into a finished product. If you look at the way these things are lined up at the bottom, it kind of helps you with the workflow in general, starting with importing and moving all the way down to the rendering step and getting it all baked together into one video. Most of the time, I only use the edit page, the color page, and the deliver page. So you don't need to use every single thing in this process. You just need to use what's right for you. Down here, we have a home button that you can click in the bottom corner here. That'll bring us back up to our project settings. And then also, right next to it is a little settings button that you want to click into, and that will help you set up all of the types of dimensions and whatnot that you need for your project to start. So over here, we'll be able to start with our timeline resolution. And let's start with 1920 by 1080, which is pretty standard for most uses. Usually it'll give us our frames per second. So whether you filmed in 60 frames per second, 30 frames per second, 24 frames per second, it really doesn't matter too much, because once you go into the cut part where you import all of your media and start cutting it up, it'll ask you to change it to the right frames per second anyways. So you can either change it then or change it later. It's whatever you'd like. But right here in that settings tab, you can fix all of the settings that you need to before you start editing. And it's very important to do that. Say you have a 6K resolution project that you import, it's automatically going to set it at 1920 by 1080p unless you change it beforehand. So that's a very important tip to know. You can also click the use vertical resolution box right here, and it'll switch your resolution to be a portrait video, almost like you're filming a phone video. If you wanted to import videos from your phone that you filmed upright, you're going to want to put it on this use vertical resolution setting. If you want to get more advanced into this, you can go into these different options and start fixing different types of things, such as the color space and the raw settings and whatnot, but we're going to not do that right now. We're going to mess with just the stuff for beginners. In the master settings, the one thing that you do want to make sure you have checked right here is enable background caching after about 3 to 5 seconds. Anytime that you're idle and you're not actually working on your project, you get up to get a cup of coffee or something, it'll start caching your video files so that they will be easier to edit and they don't have to spend the time loading and making your editing process slower. Right here in the media tab, we can figure out what kind of clips we want to put in. So there's different ways we can do it. We can go over here to our different hard drives, or we can go over here to our file and import media, import types of things along those lines. You can also just drag and drop a clip from a folder into the timeline as well. We're going to navigate to our clips. We're going to find a clip we want to use for our video. So let's do one of these from Daniela's painting videos. We'll drag that down into our clips media pool. And this is what I was saying earlier, where it asks to change the project frame rate. If you notice before, we were at 24 frames per second, but when I hit change and I go back into the settings, our frame rate is now changed to 23.97 frames per second, which is slightly different than 24, which is always nice to do because it'll match what your footage is actually playing at. You could also go straight to the cut page to import your media. You can go right in here, you can right click and hit import media, or you can just drag and drop them straight into the cut page, which is normally what I do. There's also the option to import your clips directly into the edit page, which will put them right into your timeline immediately, which is also a faster option. If you have a lot of different footage from maybe like a documentary you filmed or something that has multiple cameras, you might want to go to your media tab and actually start making bins, and a bin is pretty much a folder that has different cameras. So this one might be called camera 1. You know, you could have a different one, a different bin called B-roll, and it kind of just helps collect your footage into a cohesive system so you're not looking around for where your footage is and trying to figure out how in the world you're going to make such a huge project. It kind of clears your head up so you can edit correctly and tell your story the way you want to. And of course, you can also always go over here and do that same thing from the cut page page or the timeline itself. All right, so now from the cut page, we're gonna click the clip that we want, and we're gonna drag it right down here into our timeline. Down here in this bottom area is our timeline where we're actually going to be doing our edit. Up here is our media area where you can drag and drop from your media into your timeline to continue your edit. Also up here we have different spots where you can do other types of things like syncing or transitions or titles or effects, and it kind of just switches this area. So back over here to the media pool. This right here is our playback window where we actually play our project from, and you can see what you're editing at the time. And right here on this line is a preview of the entire edit. Right here is a more zoomed in view, and this is the entire edit from start to finish all the way at the top, which is actually really helpful to tell at what point in your video that you're actually editing. Also here we have the playheads, and you can drag your playhead across your timeline to see exactly which part in your footage you are, or you can actually drag your playhead here on the more zoomed in part of the timeline. So let's say we want to start our video in a certain spot. How about right here while she's like in the middle of her drawing? If we want to cut it, we can do many different things. The first thing we want to do is you can click the cut tool right there, and it'll cut it right exactly where your playhead is. And if you want to get rid of that part in the beginning, you simply select the clip with your mouse and then hit the delete button on your keyboard, and it will have deleted the previous part of your clip, and now this will be the start of where your clip will begin. You can always undo it by pressing Ctrl-Z on your computer or Command-Z on a Mac. You want to make sure that ripple delete is enabled, because if you don't have it enabled, I'll show you what happens. When you turn it off and you delete this clip, it now has this big black area on the back of your screen, and if you look up here in your top timeline, that's actually a whole big open black area that's part of your video that you don't want to have in there. So you want to put on ripple delete and delete that black area. So now your entire video starts at that exact moment that you want it to start. Alright, so now let's go to the end, and we can cut off kind of a spot where we would like it to stop, which let's just say right here. That's fine. We'll cut it one more time, and then we'll select the ending portion and hit delete as well. That'll set our video exactly kind of the place we want it to be. Another way to do cuts is to click and drag at the very beginning. See how it lights up green? You can click that right there, and you start dragging, and it'll start subtracting space off your clip. And same at the end, you can grab it and start dragging the opposite way, and it will cut space off your clip. Another way to make this even faster is to use keyboard shortcuts. So instead of using the little scissor cut tool over here, we can drag over and we can hit Command B, boop, and that'll make a cut exactly right where we need it. There's our cut right there. We can grab our beginning and delete it again, start it wherever we would like. Let's say we're in our timeline, we want to cut a clip, so we're going to cut it real quick, and then we're going to start dragging it down. It leaves a space like that. You could fix that by hitting Ctrl-Z and enabling this right here, which is your trim edit mode, and then when you grab that, you can start dragging, and then the rest of the clip will follow you. So that way you don't have to have any gaps. And that's in your edit tab. We're now working in the edit tab. And just a reminder, you'll be in trim mode until you go back over here and select selection mode. So we want selection mode selected most of the time. If you want to zoom in or out on your timeline, you can use your little slider right here to make your video much more zoomed in or much more zoomed out, or you can do Command plus or minus or Control plus or minus on your timeline to do that as well. You can use these buttons right here to show your entire project like that, or you can click right here to zoom in on the specific area where your playhead is. So after you've made a bunch of cuts, we'll just make a bunch right here right now. Boom, 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 boom. You could start taking these things and drag them around and put them wherever you want to kind of make your video more entertaining, kind of put the timeline and the story the way you want it to be. So if I wanted to put this clip way back here, I could put it over here, and I could just start deleting all this area in between here. If you click out in this open area and select them all, you can drag all your clips over at once, and they snap right to the other one with this little snapping tool. See right here, if I unclick this and I drag these away, I'll have no way of knowing when it's going to touch the other clip. As you can see right here, it just kind of touches it. But if I click the magnetic tool, you'll be able to see it snap right onto the end of the clip, and you won't have to worry about having a gap or cutting into the other clip. So, and boom, snapped right there. Always have snapping on. That's a really good way to do. And also over here, linked selection, you definitely want to have that on, because if you unclick that and you start dragging around your video footage, it's going to be unsynced from your audio footage down here in the green. So you want to make sure you have that selected as well. So when you drag your footage around, your audio will be linked. So up here, if you want to import more footage after you have all your cuts made, you click the media pool button, and it'll come up with your timeline stuff here. So what we want to do is right here in our footage, it comes up with a little section for a media pool. Right click on it, and we're going to import some new media. So let's go grab some media from our folders. Let's get some videos from our New York trip. Let's get just these videos right here, and we'll open them. You could scrub through these clips, see a little bit about what they're like before you actually drag them into your timeline. So let's drag this one of my sister and I in the subway into the timeline. And how about this T-Rex? Boom. If you wanted to make it bigger to see what you're actually looking at, you can double click the actual clip, and it will temporarily put it in your preview window here. That way you can scrub across and see kind of what part of the video you want to see or what you don't want to see. So then if you click back into your timeline, it'll go back into exactly what you're editing in your timeline. So if you double click on it and you want to select just a single part of the clip, so let's go into this one, and we want to select just my brother-in-law Scott walking with a pizza. So we're going to use in and out. We're going to select the I key on the keyboard for an in point, and we're going to find the spot where we turn away from him to Lydia and Danny, and then we're going to click the out, which is the O button on the keyboard. Boom. And then when you grab that, you can just grab this right here and drag it straight into your timeline. It'll only be that section that we recorded. So if you don't like the volume that happens on your clip, like this is kind of loud, you can click the mute section right here, and I can actually take the audio footage and drag it like this. That way this bottom row is the muted row, and we can actually hear audio from the top row. Any layer of footage which is stacked on top of anything else. So if I'm on this one, I see how it's selected red, I can hit Control B, it'll cut that footage into 2, and everything will look good. I can cut this footage into 2, everything will look good, and you can still drag and drop and put all these things in different places. Pretty much whatever is above is what you're going to see. So right now, if you can see, there is a T-Rex, but the second it hits this video footage, it'll be footage of the subway. And there you go. See, even though the T-Rex footage is playing underneath, the subway footage is what's being showed because that is what's put on top. If you want to make things easier for you to edit audio, you can go over here to the where your mouse makes this little icon right here, and you're going to start dragging to make your audio clips bigger. You can turn your audio up or down by clicking right here and waiting for your mouse to make those two little up and down arrows and dragging it down or dragging it up to destroy it. Pretty much you'd only ever want to be at about -3 dB whenever you're doing audio, because that's about what YouTube likes if you're uploading for YouTube. So in here also you have titles. So if we go over here to the effects tab, by the way, when you select these things, it makes different sizes. So if I have the effects and media pool selected, I'll have effects down here and media pool here. But if you want to only watch the effects at one time, only have the effects tab selected, and you'll be able to see the different things that you can get in your effects. Which, by the way, titles is another cool thing that we can do. We have lots of different titles you can do, and it puts like basic titles, background titles, sample titles, different such like that. So right here, I'm going to drag this title, I'm going to put it right over top of here. And the animation it's going to have is shoot, just like that, which is actually really cool and effective because no one likes animating. It takes forever, and you can actually do titles way faster using DaVinci Resolve like this. So if you double click on your titles, it'll pop up here, and this will be your inspector, and right here you'll be able to type in your video text. So like super fun, and then that will have the animation attached to it. Super fun. Woo! Super fun. And of course, down in all these options, you have all your different types of text options. You have your settings and such you can do. Over here, you have your zoom, your angle, your rotation, your cropping, different things that you can just mess around with and figure out exactly how you want your text to look. So now let's move into transitions and effects. So we want to click on our effects tab again. We want to go to video transitions, and it's going to give us a whole bunch of type of transitions. There's certain ones that don't look very awesome. So like you can look at this and you can have like the hexagon transition, which does not look very good. So like when you look over here, you can see it hexagons into the next one, which is like, kind of gross. What you would do is you would grab it and you would drag and drop it onto your footage. So I'm going to Control Z because we don't really like that one. So let's find one we do like. So some of the cool transitions are actually down here in the fusion transitions. Like right here, we could probably do a brightness flash, and that'll probably move us to the next scene pretty quickly and pretty nicely and seamlessly. Boom, brightness flash. Looks kind of cool. Looks pretty fun for a nice little vlog video, you know. So let's say that you wanted to move on from two different cuts. In order to make these cuts not as jarring, because it goes from one thing to another thing super quickly, we want to seamlessly transition between these cuts. So I'm going to make another cut right here, and I'm going to go up here to my inspector window. And in the inspector window on the second clip, make sure you're on the video tab, and then we can just zoom in just a little bit by waiting till that little arrow pops up and dragging. Boom. So now when we transition between the two clips, you'll see what happens. Boom. Now she's coloring and drawing. It actually makes for a much more seamless transition. So what you could do is, if you want to add some cool dynamics and whatnot, if you come over here to the dynamic zoom, it'll add a small animation to that zoom for the entirety of the clip. As you see, now it's starting to zoom out for the rest of the entire clip, which is actually pretty cool if you want to add something interesting to your video on the fly and not have to worry about doing all this professional animating and keyframing and such like that. There's a whole tab over here under your effects dedicated to effects where you can do tons of different types of things like drone overlays, DSLR overlays, dive overlays. There's a lot of awesome things you can do in your effects. I recommend going through and seeing what works for you. Just to know, the more effects that you add, the more it can actually slow down your computer, so you don't want to have to be adding way too many effects unless you have a super beast computer. If it does happen, but you still need to edit your video, you always go back to your playback tab. In your playback tab, will have this thing called timeline proxy resolution. You can click half or quarter. That way you can view your footage in half or quarter the quality, but when you render it, it will be full quality. That way you can edit without having your computer bogged down with so much data. So now we're going to add some music or some sound effects. So I'm going to go over here to my media pool. I'm going to right click into it. I'm going to import. You can import either video media or audio media. So in my assets, I have some music that I have for different videos. So let's find those real quick. Let's do some dance music and let's grab this one. So now this is in our media pool right here as dance music. So I can take that and drag and drop it right down here onto the bottom of our timeline, because music is always what you want on the bottom, and it'll always appear in green in the audio section. So when I press play now, you hear some music in the background, which is awesome. And by the way, editing your music is the same way as editing video. You select your music, then you just hit Control B, it'll cut your song. You can drag and drop it however you want. You can cut it at certain points, you can time it to the beat. And by the way, if you're looking for royalty-free music, Epidemic Sound is the best one to use. I think it's amazing, and I subscribe to it every month, and it's only $17 a month, which is actually super affordable for most people, so do it. Next thing I want to move on to after that is the color grading tab. So in the color grading tab, I'm going to go through the basics of it right now because I already made an entire tutorial about this, which is right here. You can watch it right after this video to figure out how to edit your videos the best way. You have all your different types of color edits down here in the bottom that you want to mess with. What you really want to know is that it is node based, and if you hit Alt S, you can add more nodes, and each node flows into the next node. So right here, I'll click on the first node, node number 1. I'll go into my color adjustments, and as you can see, we have all these clips down here. We don't want to see all of these clips because it makes our timeline screen pretty small. So we're going to click our clips icon up here, and it's going to get rid of those for us just for a temporary time so we can see our screen better. Then we're going to start adjusting some things. So right now in our scopes, you can see our lighting is very low. We want to make sure we increase that. So our lift is our lows, our gamma is our mids, and our gain is our highs. So right now we don't have anything really going on in our highs, so we're going to lift our gain a lot by just holding our mouse over this wheel and scrolling so we can see some highs. So you don't want to go way too high, because once you go to a certain point high, the peaks will start going above 1023. If the peaks go above 1000, right there, see the blue peak? If the peak goes above 1023, then it starts to be blown out, and those are whites that are way too white. We don't want that. So let's start lifting our gamma. When we lift our gamma, it will lift our highs just a little bit, but not much. So we want to lift our gamma to a point where you can actually see, but now our lows are too high, which is very funny sounding. So we want to bring our lows back down. So let's go to our lift and drop it down until we have a pretty balanced image where the lows just about touch the 0 line on the bottom there. And they go boop, and they touch them. Sweet. And we did all that by scrolling. So now, if you hit Alt D, click over here into your open area and click Alt D, see what it looked like before, and you can click it and see what it looks like after. So that's pretty fun to do. You can also go to your other nodes, say your next node, and mess with your saturation, either dragging it like this or double clicking on the inside and putting an actual value, which usually 65 is a good value, which I like for saturation. You come over here to your next node, and I usually go into the mid-tone detail at this point, and I type in about 80. It'll sharpen your image even more so you can be able to see all the cool little details and all the little cracks and crevices. On the next node, I usually like to mess with the tint, so I go over here to the tint. I can turn it either more green or more magenta, or I can turn it a little more blue or more warm. I like turning it warm usually, but sometimes if it's a cloudy day, turning it warm is not the best idea. So I'm going to leave this exactly the way it is, and then if I come over here to my last one, that'll be our contrast and our pivot. If we take the contrast and we drag it way up, we might need to use the pivot to kind of make it either darker or lighter in the contrasty area. So that looks pretty decent to me. I like it. We filmed this on a cloudy day, and if you check the difference between the beginning and the end of your clip, it looks vastly different. Color grading is essential when it comes to making your video look amazing. So now we're going to move on to the last part. Once you have your video all done up here in the cut section, and you have it just the way you want it, you can put it all right here into the deliver section. So right now it's going to ask you if you want to render this as a single clip, which is everything together as a single clip, or do you want to do it as individual clips. Now if you're just importing footage to color grade, you're going to want to put them on individual clips. That way it'll take this clip and it will make an individual clip, and this clip and an individual clip, and this clip into an individual clip. And if you're going to do that because you just want to color grade your footage and maybe drag it into Premiere Pro or drag it back into DaVinci Resolve later, you're going to want to click individual clips, and then your file, you're going to want to say use unique file names. If you don't do that, it's going to re-render over the one clip over and over and over, and the only thing you'll have at the end of your render is just your last clip on your timeline. If you click use unique file names, it'll render one clip, and then it'll render the next and the next and the next and the next, and you'll have an actual folder full of all the clips that you wanted rendered. But if you already have your video edited and you have all your stuff color graded the way you want it, you're going to click single clip, and it's going to render all of your stuff in your timeline as a single clip. All of the audio, all of the video as a single clip. You'll click over here in your file name, name it whatever you want, and your location, you'll browse and tell it where you want it to save your video. And then over here under your video tab, you're going to click your different aspects of how you want your video to look. I usually like to make my video in H.265 because that is much higher quality and you lose less quality when you render. So I usually like to do it in H.265 QuickTime format, which is very acceptable to YouTube. And note for you, if you're professional in doing this and you're filming in 8K, you are definitely going to want to use H.265 for your video, because H.264 does not support the 8K resolution. It doesn't even support a 6K resolution. The highest resolution that H.264 will safely support is a 4K resolution. So if you're only filming in 4K, use H.264. But if you're going to be filming in 6K or higher, or anything at all higher than 4K, use H.265, and it will support your resolution on your file type. And YouTube accepts H.265 videos as video files, so it's pretty worth it when you do it. The only thing I would recommend is if you have a Windows computer, pay the $1 extension that you need at the Microsoft Store to be able to view H.265 videos on your Windows computer, or find a free program to let you do that, because naturally you won't be able to click on an H.265 video on your Windows computer. Now that you have all that done, make it all custom. It should have your correct frame rate, it should have your correct resolution that you already had to begin with. All you're going to do is click this add to the render queue, and then you want to title it something, because, well, if you've already titled it, it wouldn't pop up with this, but I didn't title it, so it'll pop up with what you want to title it. I'll call it test, and then you hit save, and there it is. It's going to go right into that place where you said you want it to go, right here in your location. And then all you have to do in order to make that video into a video able to be posted on YouTube right now is to click render all. And that's all you need to know as a beginner in DaVinci Resolve 18.6. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. If you want more tutorials, please leave a comment on what kind of tutorial you would like to see. Like the video and subscribe to the channel for more tutorials. And as always, I hope you have an amazing day. Goodbye.